Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, North Korea's grave human rights abuses will likely be placed on the UN Security Council's agenda this week, significantly ramping up international pressure on the regime. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's ruling political coalition wins a huge victory in Sunday's snap general election. Abe now has the mandate he wants to push through his economic and security-related policies. Plus, at a summit in Lima, UN members agree on a deal to tackle climate change. It asks countries to submit national plans for reining in emissions early next year ahead of a crucial summit in Paris. Daybreak begins now.
Hello and thanks for joining us to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, December 15th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, North Korea's human rights record will likely be in the spotlight again this week as the United Nations prepares to consider a resolution on the issue. But expected vetoes by two of Pyongyang's allies are a major concern, as is an important anniversary just before the vote. Ji Myung-gil reports.
The UN Security Council is likely to put North Korea's human rights record on its agenda this week. This follows UN members' passage last month of a strongly worded resolution calling for a referral of North Korea to the International Criminal Court for human rights violations.
Draft Resolution L28 Rev 1 * is thereby adopted.
The draft resolution, which won the favor of 111 member states, will likely pass the UN General Assembly on December 18th. After that, the issue will be put on the Security Council agenda. If the Security Council adopts the resolution, Pyongyang could be referred to the ICC. But only the Security Council can refer cases to the ICC. That means the chances that Pyongyang will be referred are slim, as China and Russia, 2 of the 5 veto-holding permanent members, are expected to reject a referral. Earlier this month, 10 of the 15 council members signed a letter calling for the North Korean human rights issue to be placed on the Security Council agenda for debate. North Korea's allies China and Russia did not sign.
We don't think the UN Security Council is the right place to discuss human rights problems. Referring human rights issues to the ICC won't solve any problems.
One concern is that if the Security Council passes the resolution on December 18th, Pyongyang could respond with anger, as it did last month. North Korea's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs said the campaign staged by the United States and its followers
in their attempts to eliminate the state and social system of the DPRK is compelling us not to refrain any further from conducting nuclear tests.
Another concern is that the day before the final vote on the resolution, December 17th, is the 3rd anniversary of the death of former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the US government has confirmed the identity of the American citizen who was paraded by North Korea over the weekend, denouncing US policies, and says it's prepared to secure his safe passage out of the north. Speaking to South Korea's Yonhap news agency, State Department Deputy Spokesperson Marie Harf said the safety of its citizens is one of the government's most important priorities, but advised Americans to think carefully before traveling to the north. On Sunday, 29-year-old Texan Otto Martinez criticized Washington for alleged human rights violations and illegal wars, naming the Iraq War as an example. Martinez, who you can see there, said he entered North Korea illegally in November by crossing the Yalu River between North Korea and China. Now, it's not known whether Martinez, who may or may not have some mental issues, is being used by the North for propaganda purposes, and his illegal status in North Korea is unclear. It's also unknown whether he is free to leave the country or not. The South Korean government is seeking ways to improve the current frosty relations with North Korea as the year draws to a close. Seoul plans to start talks on the resumption of a suspended tour program to Mount Kumgang in North Korea and reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Meanwhile, a group of South Korean firms continues to call for the lifting of the so-called May 24th sanctions on North Korea, which has suspended pretty much all inter-Korean economic projects except for the joint Kaesong industrial complex. These sanctions were imposed on Pyongyang after a deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. South Korean government officials have acknowledged that the May 24th sanctions acted as one of the biggest obstacles to mending ties between the two Koreas. Now, over in Japan, and the country's ruling coalition won more than 2/3 of the total seats in the lower house in Sunday's snap general election, and this has given Prime Minister Shinzo Abe the mandate he was really desperate for to push ahead with his grand economic plans. Our Son Jung-in reports.
Japan's ruling coalition won a 2/3 majority of parliamentary elections seen as a referendum on Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's economic policy. Abe's Liberal Democratic Party won 290 of 475 seats in the lower house of parliament. Together with its junior partner Komeito, which won 35 seats, they retained the 2/3 majority needed to pass legislation.
I'm relieved we've managed to continue our ruling coalition with the Komeito party. But at the same time, this is also a great responsibility.
It was a crushing defeat for the main opposition party. Although it secured an extra 11 seats, the Democratic Party of Japan had to settle with only 73 seats, while the Japan Innovation Party won 41. As if reflecting the people's indifference, voter turnout was 52%, the lowest figure since World War II, and well short of the previous low of 59% set in 2012. Many observers say the lack of a clear political alternative to the ruling party, especially with respect to its economic policy, left many voters feeling underwhelmed over a general election just 2 years into the usual 4-year term. Abe, who had been seeking a powerful victory to give him a strong mandate, is now expected to push ahead with his Abenomics, his signature plan to try and fix the Japanese economy. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now to the latest on the case that's transfixed the nation here in Korea, and focus is growing on what exactly happened in the lead-up to the so-called nut rage incident that caused the then Vice President of Korean Air to demand the plane be turned back to the terminal. Speaking to Korea-based TV network KBS, head steward Park Chang-jin, who was ordered to get off the plane by Jo Hyuna, who you can see there, said he felt ashamed as he was made to kneel down in front of Jo while being bombarded with insults. Park added that Korean Air officials visited his home almost every day, demanding he falsely testify about the incident before the authorities. Now, Jo has said she doesn't remember the events Park has described, but a passenger who witnessed it has backed up Park's side of the story. Korea's Transport Ministry says Park will be brought in for additional questioning later on this Monday. Now, oil prices continue to fall around the world, and of course this means petrol prices are falling in Korea as well. And this is giving those in the transport industry as well as drivers out there a reason to feel pretty good. Unfortunately, with most things, there is a flip side, and other industries aren't faring as well because of the lower oil prices. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
Drivers have been happy lately, as the benchmark oil price has been on the decline, closing a little below $58 a barrel on Friday, a drop of 46% below its late June high for the year. Industries that rely on oil, like shipping and airlines, have been reaping the savings, as have businesses related to IT, like semiconductors and display panels. Low oil prices could also eventually boost the auto industry, inducing more drivers to buy larger vehicles.
In the U.S., the international oil price can be directly linked to the rising consumer spending, so businesses that export IT products and vehicles to the U.S. can expect some benefits.
But not everyone is smiling. The refining industry is suffering, and the shipbuilding industry and domestic construction companies are seeing a drop in overseas orders.
The drop in oil prices causes an increase in real income, eventually revitalizing consumption. But at a time when consumer sentiment is stagnant, the increase may not be directly related to consumption.
The impact of the oil price drop on the Korean economy remains to be seen. Industry watchers say a strategy for making use of current oil prices is needed before oil prices bounce back up. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's rapidly growing mobile shopping industry is forecast to reach a new milestone in the coming year. According to a report released on Sunday by a local investment firm, mobile shopping transactions are likely to exceed regular online shopping transactions for the first time in the third quarter of next year. The report says the mobile shopping market has increased in part because of greater accessibility and an increase in women's purchasing power. Some of the more popular items purchased via smartphones, smart devices include child-related products and clothing and fashion items. Now, Korean companies are seeking to tap into markets in Islamic countries, which together have a combined population of well over 1.5 billion people. But before they do, they have some big hurdles to overcome, one of which is obtaining Halal certification. A Korean cosmetics brand recently got its hands on one, leading the way for local companies to follow suit. Kim Min-ji reports.
Talent Cosmetic is the first Korean cosmetics brand to receive Halal certification from the Malaysian government. That clears about 150 products in its lineup for sale in the country. The company, which uses popular K-pop groups to advertise its products, hopes this will allow it to gain better access to the $2 trillion Islamic market. In fact, many Korean companies have been eyeing Islamic nations as their next business stop. But entering comes with strings attached, as they need to obtain Halal certification to target the 1.6 billion Muslim population. Halal means permissible in Arabic and means that a product is approved for consumption or use under Islamic Sharia law. Simply put, a product cannot contain pork, alcohol, blood, or meat that wasn't butchered in God's name. So far, only a handful of Korean firms, including Pulmuone, have obtained necessary certification and enter countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. And Korean products overall remain relatively unknown to Muslim consumers. However, experts say Korean pop culture, or Hallyu, could help them gain a footing.
Products without halal certification are being exported to Islamic nations, but obviously Muslims don't buy them. But when products have the certification, they become a preferred choice, and because of the growing popularity of Hallyu there, that will make Korean products more appealing.
To take full advantage of this blue ocean market, the experts stress the company should also do more to offer halal-related goods and services in Korea to better cater to the growing local Muslim population and those who are visiting. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea has been a major buyer of Western military hardware for many years now, but its own defense industry is growing now at a startling pace. For a look at what exactly has driven the nation's success in recent years, Kim Yeon-bin has this week's Industry Insight.
South Korea's defense exports have ballooned over the past 5 years or so. Until the early 2000s, the country's defense industry exports were mainly small arms and supplies, such as boots and helmets. The situation today is vastly different. In recent years, South Korea has been exporting heavy-duty military arms and vehicles, including fighter jets, submarines, and destroyers. This shift has dramatically boosted the nation's defense exports in dollar terms. In 2006, South Korea broke the $250 million mark for the first time. By 2011, this had jumped to $2.3 billion. And last year, the figure topped $3.4 billion. So what triggered the boom in sales?
Our prices compare favorably, and the nations that buy from South Korea are satisfied with what they get. All of our defense-related exports are used by the South Korean Army and are proven for battle. Also, as a lot of countries in the Southeast Asia are locked in territorial disputes with China, many now buy their defense-related equipment and supplies from South Korea instead of China.
The spillover effects from the defense deals to the economy have been sizable. Take, for example, the sale of 24 Fa-50 fighter jets to Iraq in 2013. Now, this deal, worth over $1.1 billion, will develop a chain of suppliers networks and after-sale deals that are estimated to total more than $4 billion. This project has also created roughly 36,000 jobs. While this sounds great, South Korea still has a long way to go to reach the level of the major players in the industry. The country's exports accounted for a mere 0.8% of the world's total defense exports. The United States, Russia, Britain, Germany, and France together have a grip on 3/4 of the total global arms market. And the dominant powers aren't sitting back as South Korea tries to sharpen its competitive edge.
The United States, France, Britain, and Germany are watching South Korea very closely as they are competitors in the international arms market. Koreans should have pride in their defense industry and support government policies that make our country more competitive on the global stage.
South Korea has been successful so far, but to sustain and increase its share of the multi-billion-dollar arms market, the industry needs to diversify.
South Korea should open up to more markets in the third world. Most of them are in territorial conflicts and in need of naval equipment such as combat ships. In the future, we could make up to 3% of the total defense exports. But we need to invent new weaponry and upgrade our Korean-style weapons to meet global standards.
Competition is fiercer than ever, with Japan and China jumping into the defense market at full speed. For that reason, experts say the Korean government and the public need to stay committed and focused to maintain their growth in the international market. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this Monday morning here in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. UN nations have reached an agreement on a framework to ward off worsening global climate change, wrapping up 2 weeks of tough talks. The treaty, signed by some 190 nations in Lima, Peru, significantly moved away from the understanding that only wealthy nations would be required to cut greenhouse gas emissions, as outlined in the 1997 Kyoto Protocol. Over the 2-day extension, countries hotly debated the shift and the obligations of the rich and poor, as emerging economies like China and India said previous drafts had placed too heavy a burden on them. The draft agreement would have individual countries submit their emission goals by the end of March of next year in light of different national circumstances, ahead of the International Climate Treaty that is to be signed in Paris next year and come into effect in 2020. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius warned much work remained for the Paris Convention. A former White House counsel and attorney general under George W. Bush has voiced his concerns on the CIA's so-called torture report recently released by the Senate Intelligence Committee. In an appearance on a conservative cable network, Alberto Gonzalez said Friday that there were some activities by CIA interrogators that went beyond the Justice Department's guidance in the treatment of detainees. Gonzalez added that such acts could damage the United States standing in the world community. However, he also pointed out that it was unclear to him how much trust could be placed in the report, given that no Republicans were involved in the final document. And staying with the U.S., its upper house passed a $1.1 trillion spending bill, ending a 2-year legislative session that has been marred by bitter disputes and few major gains for the country. The Senate approved the bill 56-40 on Saturday night local time, which is expected to be signed by President Barack Obama into law before it expires at midnight on Wednesday. The 1,600-page bill included an additional $5.4 billion to fight Ebola and a cut of $60 million for the government's Environmental Protection Agency. It would also fund most government agencies through September of next year, though the country's Homeland Security Department is only covered through the end of February, in time for the Republican control of both chambers of Congress.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in baseball, where Kang Jung-ho of the Nexon Heroes is set to be posted today, becoming the third KBO player this offseason to be posted. But of course, this offseason, it's 0-2 so far for the Koreans, with Kim Kwang-hyun and Yang Yeon-jung both failing to get a major league deal. But the interest for Kang Jung-ho has been significantly greater, as many experts have their eyes on the power-hitting shortstop. And according to several reports, the New York Mets are highly interested in signing the Korean, as he's expected to be posted for $6 to $10 million. And now shifting over to women's golf and the 2014 Chinese Women's Open, which finished off on Sunday. And what a way to finish off the year for 19-year-old Kim Hyo-ju, as she claimed yet another title over the weekend. Now finishing off the final round of the event with 8 birdies and just 1 bogey, Kim Hyo-ju finishes off the Chinese Women's Open at 14 under par overall for a 2-stroke victory over fellow Korean Chun In-ji. Now with the final victory of the year, she finishes the year with 7 wins in total, including an LPGA major victory. Meanwhile, the Chinese Women's Open victory is the second of her career, as she won it back in 2012. And now, speaking of finishing the year on a high note, the god of vault, Yang Ak-sun, finished off the year with a bang, winning a gold medal in the vault competition during the 2014 Toyota International Gymnastics Cup over the weekend. Now, with the London gold medalist trying to bounce back from his previous injuries, which had him finish 2nd during the Incheon Asian Games and 7th during the World Championships, he pulls off the Yud-2 in his first attempt, followed by the Lopez triple to secure a gold medal in the event. That is the 2nd time he's won at the Toyota International Gymnastics Cup, with his first being back in 2012. And now finishing things off in football, the Korean national football team begins their week-long training session, as the team led by manager Uli Stilicke will leave to Jeju later today. Now with the 2015 Asian Cup kicking off in less than a month now, the 60-year-old head coach will bring with him players from the domestic league and those playing in Japan and China, as the other overseas players are currently in season. Now, with head coach Stilicke stating that he'll only take the hungry and the passionate, it's anybody's guess as to who will make the team after the training session in Jeju. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Now we're expecting a mix of rain and snow across the nation today. It will snow from the central parts of the nation before gradually spreading to other parts. Now Gangwon-do should receive up to 20 centimeters of heavy snowfall, while Seoul and the surrounding areas will see somewhere between 1 and 5 centimeters from lunch hour, then snow throughout the day. But due to relatively milder temperatures, it could be raindrops before turning into snow later in the evening. So again, it's gonna be a wet day today, so be sure to have an umbrella handy before heading out this morning. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now the low in Seoul is kicking off at -3, then the afternoon high will hike up to 3, while Daegu and Gwangju should peak at 6 and 8, and Busan will top out at 9 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will hike up to 12, while Daejeon and Dokdo sees highs of 6 and 5 respectively. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at 7 a.m. Korea time in about 30 minutes. Have a great day and stay tuned to Arirang. Goodbye.